Well, those little mini air compressors, they just seem to be popping up everywhere, don't they? They are just ubiquitous now. I'm taking a look at some options from a company called CYCPLUS. 4 different models. One of them I really can't recommend. One of them is an absolute beast when it comes to inflating tires, and 2 of them, well, one of those 2 is probably the sweet spot for most cyclists. Let's have a look, shall we? CYCPLUS. CYCPLUS is a company that makes 4 different models of these little portable mini air compressors for putting air back in the tire of your bicycle once it has leaked out, or for just topping it up at home, etc., etc. And I did a video previously to this where I took 3 air compressors and I kind of really posed the question, are these going to replace mini pumps or quick fills for most riders out there? I think they probably will, and I'm seeing that being adopted more and more in the group of older riders that I ride with. Well, CYCPLUS reached out to me and said, hey, we make 4 of these little models, at least at the time of this video, and we would like to send you them, want you to talk about them and tell people about them on our video and let us know what you think. And that is exactly what I'm going to do. They did that at no cost to me. I am under no obligation to say lovely things about them. One of them, of the 4 models, is an absolute beast in putting air in your tire. It's a workhorse. 1 I don't really recommend, and 2 of the other ones, one of those 2 is probably the sweet spot for most cyclists. Let's take a look at CYCPLUS real quickly and the 4 different models. So what we've got is the AS2. The AS2 is, I think, the first model I remember seeing them do. It has no gauge on it. It's the smallest, it's the lightest, and the cheapest. From there we go up to the AS2 Pro and the AS2 Ultra. Now the AS2 Pro adds a digital gauge to it, so you know how much air you're putting in your tire, and you can preset a pressure and have it stop automatically when it reaches that pressure. The AS2 below it, the cheapest one and the smallest one, has no gauge on it. We'll talk about that in a minute. And then there's the AS2 Ultra, which is basically looks an awful lot like the Pro, but is lighter and considerably lighter. You can feel it in your hand, and is slightly smaller, but also retains the gauge function, which is kind of nice to have. Then we move to the Pro Max. The Pro Max, it's the big boy of all of them, probably a little bigger than you'd want to. I wouldn't want to put that in a jersey pocket. However, it has remarkable performance when it comes to inflating your tires. And you can see that it is the big and the most expensive. As you'll notice that the battery size of these 4 varies a little bit. Let me get my notes out. So when we look at this, if you look at the AS2, it shows it has a 300 milliamp hour battery that's 7.4 volts. The AS2 Ultra steps up to a 400 milliamp hour battery. So it's a little smaller, probably why it weighs a little bit less than the Pro, because the Pro has a 420 milliamp hour battery. Both are 7.4 volts. Now, the Pro Max has a 600 milliamp hour battery and an 11.7 volt rating on that battery. So real quickly, the bigger the number in front of milliamp hours basically is kind of telling you how much current that battery can produce for how long. And so the bigger the number is better. And since we're talking about trying to inflate tires as much as possible, as many times as possible, more milliamp hours is good. The problem though is the bigger batteries weighs more and takes up more room. And I guess it's a compromise, isn't it? Where is that sweet spot? Well, probably a couple of these hit that. But let's talk about how I tested them really quickly. Now when I say test, basically I just took a tire. It's a 700 by 32 that measures 700 by 33 on it. On my road bike rim, I dumped all the air out of it. I went from 0 to 60 PSI, which I think is a reasonable place to land, as many times as I could with each one of these, and I watched what it did. I took did a stopwatch thing, and I saw how long it took, how many times it did it, and basically how the performance was, and did anything crop up that wasn't good. And I did that over and over and over until they just didn't want to play anymore. This isn't, for me to actually take these and say this is a long-term review. How would I do a long-term review on 4 mini air compressors that I typically carry but don't really use much, and I'm not going to, there's some channels that actually take these things apart and see what's inside them at the end of the review. I admire you, engineering guy. That is not me. I just wanted to take it and use it and get an idea. So if you're going to shop for these, you can hopefully shop wisely. All right, the AS2, the little one, no gauge. Took approximately 3 minutes to get to 60 PSI on the first run. The second run, it went to 39 PSI, which took 1 minute, 10 seconds, and the battery shut down. Basically, I did not get 2 full inflations of the tire. Okay, so keep that in mind. Didn't get very hot. However, here's the complication with the AS2. You know, when you got a quick fill or a mini pump, most mini pumps don't have a gauge, some do. You really don't know kind of where you are, right? You just kind of put it in there and you, well, that's kind of what I had to do with the AS2 since it had no gauge. 60, I would have to like pull it off after a little while and take my little air checker. I had a digital air checker, by the way, to make sure all these really went to 60 or where they ended up. They all went to 60. If they made a full pass, every one of them was in a half a PSI of 60. So that's good. Well, the AS2 basically, I had to kind of guess at it and then check it with the air checker. Now, if you're out on a bike ride, you're just going to run it up until it feels good, probably really, but you won't really know what pressure you're at. Okay. All right. Thoughts on the AS2 at the end. AS2 Ultra. On the first run, it took 1 minute 15 seconds to 60 pounds PSI of pressure. It took 1 minute 16 to go to the second run to 60. At that point, I had 2 dots out of 3 battery. They have little battery indicators, the ones that have a gauge on them. So I lost 1 dot. The third run, it went to 40 PSI at 42 seconds, and it stopped with a low voltage code E10, which is telling you basically, I'm done. And it had 1 dot, and it was getting very slow. You can hear the compressor slow down. Okay. The AS2 Pro did actually quite a bit better than the Ultra. Remember, it has a slightly higher amp hour capacity battery, and that's probably why. It went 4 times to 60 PSI, averaging about 1 minute 20 to 1 minute 40 seconds each time, but about 120. Each time it did it 4 times. The 4th time actually didn't quite get to 60. It got up to 56 PSI. It's pretty close. And the battery was pretty dead. And it was pretty hot by then, but still not bad to touch. None of these got so hot I didn't want to hold them anymore. The chuck, though, does get quite hot. Now the Pro Max, that's the big one. That's the big one. That's this one right here. That is a workhorse. It took 29 seconds, and it averaged about 30 seconds to go to 60 PSI. That was pretty fast. And it did it 6 times. And at 6 times, it still wasn't done. I think I probably could have done another one or another partial one, but it was getting pretty hot and noisy, and it only had 1 dot left of the battery strength. And I thought, you know, I just don't want to push it. I think I proved the point that this thing is definitely, of all of them, as you'd expect, the biggest one, biggest battery. It was able to inflate the tire the most times. Now, I was curious to see how my gold standard in my little compressors of the 3 that I have, which is the VIAIR Mini, I used it to see how it would do to compare to the 2. It averaged about 1 minute across the 4 times to 60 PSI. A minute each, it did it 4 full times, and on the 4th run, it went all the way to 60. Took a little longer, it was 1 minute 18. It was starting to slow down a little bit. It was warm, but not too hot, but the battery was red at that point, and I saw no point to go any further because it's not going to go very much further. But it did it 4 times. Okay, all right. Now, some things I noticed in this test and some recommendations. Now let's talk about generally what you do as you see in the video. You just press this onto the Presta-Chuck. Obviously, you've got the Presta-Chuck open or the Schrader, and you start it up and you run it, and it puts air in the tire. When you're done, you just pull it off. Well, you can also do that with a hose. Why would you want to do that? Well, a couple of reasons. These get pretty hot. The air coming out of this is hot. The chuck gets pretty hot, and it heats up your Presta valve. If you're using a little plastic valve from a TPU tube, okay, or even putting hot air into a TPU tube, I think I would want to separate that heat a little bit from that plastic valve because it can damage it. So you do want to use a hose, because this hose, although the air is hot, it doesn't directly transfer heat like it does when you're touching metal to metal with this really hot chuck. Because a few times of using one of these, and this isn't going to be too hot, but that is. So all these come with a hose. Probably a good idea to carry the hose with you, although typically, honestly, I don't. So, all right. So what are my thoughts on these units overall, and then which one do I not recommend and why, and which ones do I recommend and why? Okay, to begin with, all of them ran nice and cool. None of them have that really nice refined motor sound to them, like the Recon Mini, the VIAIR Recon Mini, which sounds like some high-end sewing machine when it's running. Just, you know, it's noisy, but it sounds like a machine, you know. These are a little noisy, kind of, and kind of rattly. That kind of reminds me of the Trek. The Trek unit was like that too. Didn't seem to hurt the performance of them, and I don't even know if it means anything bad, but it doesn't sound too, well, confidence inspiring. But that said, I don't recommend the AS2, the one without the gauge, the cheapest and smallest one, unless you're just absolutely on a budget and you just want to use it for, I mean, you're only maybe going to get like one tire out of this. And if the battery has dropped a little bit and you didn't know it, you may not even get one tire out of it. Plus, I don't like the idea of not having a gauge. It's not just for emergencies, like you get a flat and you want to put air in your tire. A lot of people are using these like to just check their tire pressure throughout the ride week and just top it up. Well, without a gauge, it's a ponderous thing to do that. I know it's the smallest, I know it's the cheapest. For me, you got to have something out there. If I can't inflate a tire twice with it, I'm not going to carry it, because to me it just isn't worth it. So the AS2, the one without the gauge, the little one, I don't recommend. The big one, the Pro Max, this thing is a workhorse. It really didn't sound like it was working too hard. And it did it 6 times and probably could have done it maybe partially one more time. That's actually pretty impressive. If I was going to go someplace and I got a pack, and I don't mind the weight and the size of this, like you're bike packing, and you probably still would have a pump with you, but maybe you just want to have this too. You're touring, or how about the pump, the little mini pump you use around your house? You keep it on your garage counter there or in the house, and you just check your tires before every ride. Then you charge this once in a while. I think this would be really, really good for that. And it's a beast. Like I said, it's quite the performer. For me, it's too big to carry on a normal ride. It's more than I would need for just your normal ride. I certainly wanted to put this thing in a jersey pocket, in a bag somewhere on my gravel bike, sure, but typically this is a bit of a big dog, but it's a workhorse. The other two, the Ultra and the Pro. Well, the Ultra is lighter and it's slightly smaller, has a slightly smaller capacity battery. I don't know if there are other things inside that made it lighter. It's impressively light. And to put this in a jersey pocket, this is the one I was going to choose if I just wanted something minimal, small, and as light as possible. And it's going to get me a couple tires inflated. This is the Ultra. That was where I would choose that way. But I think this is more the sweet spot for most people. This is the Pro. It's a little heavier, a little bigger, but it had a little bit higher performance. And when I look at it, I've forgotten the difference real quick. Let's see. So the Ultra, it inflated the tire twice to 60 and then went to 40 PSI and stopped on the 3rd run. The Pro went to 60 pounds 3 times with no trouble at all, and on the 4th run went to 56, which is pretty darn close to 60. Now, to my mind, for the small amount of weight and the small amount of size for these two, I would go for the Pro. I think that probably is, for most cyclists, the sweet spot in the CYCPLUS line. But if you're a minimalist and you still want to have a gauge, Ultra, well, if you're trying to save the most weight as possible in your pocket, Ultra might get it done for you. Remember Fumpa mini pumps? I had completely forgotten about Fumpa, and CYCPLUS was, I think, the company that I saw at first and said, oh, look at that, isn't that interesting? And somebody commented on my other video and said, doesn't anybody remember Fumpa? And I said, oh yeah, the little red one. And I looked that up, and you know, that's an interesting little unit. Apparently it's Australian. Is that correct? You guys can correct me if I'm wrong. It looks like it's made there, which is interesting. It looks like it's industrial quality to it, and it's got a 500 milliamp hour battery in the one I looked at. They have different models maybe. I don't know a lot about them. I've never used one. But here's something I liked about it. It said it has a user replaceable or user reserviceable battery in it. Well, you know what? One of these things, what's the first thing that's going to go? Probably the battery. I mean, it could be the motor. If the motor dies, you're done. And there's a warranty with these, of course, but eventually you'll be out of warranty. And if the battery goes on this, it stops charging or stops doing what it does to be a battery, well, basically you're going to recycle this thing if best you can. Well, the Fumpa, you can change the battery. I like that about it. Now, Fumpa, if you're watching, be interesting to get my hands on one of your little red mini pumps. All right, that's it, guys. That was way too long. I apologize, and I don't think I did a particularly good job, but hopefully I help you between these four come to some kind of a good shopping decision. Thanks to CYCPLUS for sending these out to me. I think I'm going to find a use for all these except maybe the AS2. I just don't know what I'd use that for, but the others, probably give them to some friends or stick them on Mrs. Granny Gear's bike. And I'm going to use the Pro Max. That's going to replace basically probably my bigger size compressor for just topping up tires, because this thing is quite a little air compressor. You guys have a great week and or weekend, and as always, go ride your bikes.